Why didn't they just leave? It's a common response when hearing about someone that has been abused. And if you are the one out of an abusive relationship, you might have heard people ask you, like, why did you stay so long? Or why did you go back? And like, how can you still care about a person like that? Or why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell everyone about it? That overlooks a very powerful psychological phenomenon known as trauma bonding. This hidden dynamic often explains why victims remain loyal to abusers, especially in cases involving narcissistic relationships. So let's look at what trauma bonding is, how it develops in relationships with narcissists, the neuroscience behind it, how it manifests in daily life, and most importantly, how survivors can begin to break free. Trauma bonding is a strong emotional attachment that forms between a victim and an abuser through a cycle of abuse and intermittent reinforcement and manipulation. It is coined by psychologist Patrick Carnes in the context of addiction and abuse. Trauma bonding, it mirrors the psychological mechanisms often seen in hostage and cult situations dynamics. At its core, trauma bonding is not about love, though it often masquerades as it. Instead, it is about survival, confusion, and a completely sort of distorted sense of safety, sanity, self. How trauma bonds form with narcissists. So you could call it sort of the perfect storm. Because trauma bonds form in environments of intermittent reward and punishment. A classic pattern in narcissistic abuse. It starts with the love bombing. The relationship begins with this intense affection, admiration, and idealization. Devaluation without warning. The narcissist shifts. Criticism, emotional withdrawal, gaslighting, and even physical or sexual abuse begin. Then you have the intermittent reinforcement. Just when the victim is about to leave or consider leaving, the narcissist returns with affection, apologies, future faking, or promises of change. They have fear and dependency. Over time, the victim becomes dependent on the abuser for validation and a sense of identity. This cycle creates a biochemical and psychological addiction. The highs, they are euphoric. The lows are devastating, and the inconsistency makes the victim work harder for the so-called reward. The biochemistry of a trauma bond. Why your brain gets hooked on it. Your brain doesn't differentiate between physical and emotional pain. It only knows pain needs soothing. So here's how trauma bonding affects the brain. Dopamine is released during the love bombing and intermittent affection phases. It is the same neurotransmitter that reinforces addiction. Cortisol spikes during devaluation and abuse phase. High cortisol over time creates anxiety and physical illness. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released during any perceived intimacy, love, or care. Adrenaline increases with conflict, creating emotional intensity mistaken for passion and connection. And the result? Your nervous system, it gets trapped in a loop of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. You crave the abuser's validation if it was a drug. And breaking away causes withdrawal symptoms similar to detoxes from substances. Here are some signs that you might be in a trauma bond with a narcissist. Recognizing a trauma bond can be difficult because it hides behind what feels like love, passion, or loyalty and care. Here are some key signs. You make excuses for your partner's abusive behavior. You feel panic or dread at the thought of leaving. You feel like no one else could understand or complete you. You keep secrets about the abuse from your family and friends. You feel that you've lost yourself, but you're afraid of being without them. You walk on eggshells to keep the peace. Why victims don't just leave? Cognitive dissonance. The abuser often presents two faces, and victims struggle to reconcile the charming, seemingly loving and caring version with the abusive, evil one. Isolation. Narcissists, they often isolate their victims from support systems. Fear of retaliation. Narcissists may threaten to harm you or loved ones, custody loss, public smear campaigns. Financial abuse. Control over money can trap victims. Hope for change. Victims often believe the abuser would change if they just love them enough. Social stigma. Cultural or religious beliefs may shame victims who leave. Practical bonds. Fear of losing children, pets, home or business that you have together with the abuser. Narcissists often use sophistry. It is a manipulative form of argument that sounds logical but is designed to deceive. Common tactics include gaslighting. That never happened. Word salad. Tangled monologues designed to derail the conversation. Victim reversal. DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. Future faking. Promises of change that never materialize. Minimizing. You're overreacting. It wasn't that bad. You're too sensitive. These tactics keep the victim off balance, second-guessing the perception and clinging to the hope of clarity that never comes. How trauma bonds affect the legal process. Many victims in trauma bonds freeze or act unreasonable in court due to fear, shame, or emotional dependency on the abuser. And this can confuse judges, social workers, therapists who don't understand trauma dynamics. Narcissists often manipulate the court, seeing it as a stage to perform, using charm, tear, selective truths, making themselves look like the rational party. Victims, triggered and dysregulated, can appear unstable. Breaking the bond. Here are some steps towards freedom. Education. Learn about narcissistic abuse and trauma bonds. Name it. Acknowledge that you're in a trauma bond. This awareness, it is powerful. Go no contact if you can, or grey rock if co-parenting. Go no contact or grey rock if co-parenting. Remove or reduce exposure, and therapy with a trauma-informed specialist. Not all therapists understand narcissistic abuse, and yes, I do one-on-one sessions. Journaling. Keep a log of abusive behaviors to counter cognitive dissonance. Connect with support, friends, support groups, online communities, nervous system regulation, breathwork, somatic therapy, EMDR can help calm your body's trauma response. Freedom is on the other side. Leaving a narcissist is not a one-time event. It's a psychological process of waking up from the fog that has been carefully crafted. Trauma bonding, it is not your fault, but breaking free is your responsibility and your right. You're not alone. Thousands have walked this path before you, and with the right tools, education and support, you can totally reclaim your life, your power, your happiness again. I can warmly recommend to attend my 16-week narcissistic abuse recovery program. It is super effective. And if you're in any form of a legal battle with a narcissist or anticipating one coming, I can warmly recommend that you read my book, Narcissism and the Law. You can find links to both of them in the description. Thank you so much.